Alrighty, greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to our Wednesday night live stream for Week 9 of the 2024 fantasy football season. Again, over the next hour plus, we're talking all things fantasy football, whether it is a potential waiver wire pickup, a trade, a starter sit question going into Week 9. Regardless of what your question is, whether you do send it in the live chat and or via the super chat, make sure you include your scoring format, whether that be a half PPR, full PPR, standard, all of the above. Any sort of context you provide, the easier it will make it going into this week. Outside of that, we should be good to go. I do appreciate y'all coming through. Again, as of this, overall live stream, I will be keeping my eye on this Dodgers game. We have somehow roared back, and then now we are starting to slowly but surely throw the game back in their direction. But I will keep an eye on that as we progress. At the end of today's overall live stream, I will put together a couple potential entries for Underdog's game tomorrow between the Jets and Houston Texans. I know many of you are probably looking for my place for that. If we don't get anything established by tonight, for sure by tomorrow's video when we talk about quarterbacks and tight end rankings before the overall game takes place, that will be available. Appreciate it. Okay, outside of that, let's go ahead and let's get into it, shall we? First question of the day comes in from Juice Fino, who says, "Sub Drew, full PPR, Darnold or Knicks?" Darnold or Knicks, between the two of them as of this week, Knicks provides so much rushing upside that it makes him difficult not to play. Even in a matchup against the Baltimore Ravens where you may be thinking, well, it's a good defense. It hasn't been a good defense. Their run-stopping defense is great, but their ability to stop opposing receivers, tight ends, etc. has been awful this season. Just because of that rushing upside potential, I think I lean towards the direction of Knicks in a 4-point per passing touchdown league. If it was a 6-point per passing touchdown league, I may consider Darnold to be a slightly better option. But for right now, we're going to lean towards Knicks. Alex Sondgrass sends in a question, says, "Standard, trade Adams plus Bigsby for BTJ. Lost Godwin." I mean, yeah, if we're looking just for immediate potential, then sure. Considering the Christian Kirk injury, the Gabe Davis recent injury, I think it's probably an okay move. Again, I don't know what the rest of your running back depth looks like, Alex, into giving away Bigsby in this circumstance. I mean, Bigsby could theoretically be there starting early down back for the remainder of the year. So this could be giving up a little bit too much, especially if Adams figures it out sooner rather than later. But I guess this is more of like a panic move just to get out of Adams because of what he has done recently. In this scenario, I think I understand the move, but I'd like to know more of the context of your team before I can 100%, say, yeah, we have to absolutely go in this direction. Thank you. All right, we had a question that came in from Logan McGuire, who says, "Trade DK Metcalf for Alvin Kamara in a 10-team non-PPR league." Yeah, absolutely. Regardless of a non-PPR, full PPR format, being able to get a running back of this caliber that is going to be implicated for so many potential touchdowns the rest of the way, even though, yes, he doesn't get those yards per he doesn't get the points per reception, he's still going to get the receiving yards and anything that's potentially upside from there, which is the receiving touchdowns that he could potentially kind of accrue over the course of the remainder of the season. So for right now, yeah, I'd be willing to make that move. I have no issue with that at all, especially with the concerns of DK Metcalf's knee injury, the potential re-aggravation of that, or something even worse. I think it's a pretty good trade there in terms of getting a running back for your roster. Logan, thank you. All right, let's hear. Nick Q sends in a question. Says, did you think about ? Did you think about the question, JT or Downs this week? Yeah, in a PPR. If JT would you also start him over Cup? Okay, between the two of them, I'm playing Downs. That's who I would rather play in a full PPR. So am I playing Cup over JT? I would play Cup over JT as well. I'm playing both of them over JT, to be honest. In a full PPR scoring format, you kind of have to, based on their safety of production and the matchups that they both have, exclusively. Thank you, Nick. Ibrahim sends in a question, says, "Saw rankings. I'm going to start Sutton. But can you give me some more insight as to why I start him over Michael Pittman Jr. or Waddle?" Yeah, Waddle, the issue with Waddle is lack of target opportunity. That's purely it. Like, there's a lot of wide receivers over the course of the season that do not show up on a consistent enough basis because they aren't given enough opportunity. Waddle is one of those guys. Unfortunately, with Tua, unless he is to score a touchdown or have a huge reception down the field in which he's making, the play after the catch, which again is not, as uncommon as we may experience as of late. Ultimately, in terms of Waddle, it's just the lack of opportunity. And then on top of it, it's going to have to take on Buffalo's secondary, which again, is as recent as last season, did not play well against them, even with Tua under center. And then if we talk about Michael Pittman Jr. or Sutton, the only thing that bothers me potentially Michael Pittman Jr. wise in comparison to Sutton is that Michael Pittman Jr. is always questionable. Did not practice earlier today, still dealing with that back injury. that is something that I'm always trying to, and I mentioned this yesterday and the day before. If you're ever going to trade for Michael Pittman, you have to be very careful, because there was an instance earlier this season in which they said he's probably going to the IR, but he's been playing through that injury. Whatever that ends up being, it's kind of expressed as a quote-unquote back injury. So if that's something that is going to potentially kind of impact him, if he's going to be missing tomorrow's practice, then Friday's practice, the choice may be made for you in that circumstance. But when I look at the two overall kind of situations, Michael Pittman's value as of late has purely been reliant on touchdowns. Without touchdowns, he has not been a great overall wide receiver in terms of the overall target opportunity and or kind of receptions, receiving yards that he has had with Joe Flacco. I talked about it earlier today, right? You watched the episode, Ibrahim. 7 targets per game, about 4.7 receptions, 60 some odd receiving yards. If he doesn't score those touchdowns, he's in major trouble, which makes him a little bit of a lesser play in comparison to Sutton, who will be in a negative game script for the entire of this game as well, and the number one clear and away receiving option in comparison to Michael Pittman Jr., who is certainly behind the overall potential of Josh Downs. And additionally, he's probably going to play third fiddle to whatever the running game is attached to this offense. They're probably going to run the ball 30 times, more like 22 plus times in the given game, in comparison to, unfortunately, the Denver Broncos, who are very quick to abandon the running game in any circumstance, especially last week. Itoza sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, hope you're doing all right. I am. Hopefully the Dodgers pull out a victory here, and if in fact they're able to, then we'll be doing even better in this circumstance. Should I drop my... says, should I drop for a quarterback? Should I drop for a quarterback? I have Love. Yeah, I mean, look, again, the fact that Love didn't practice today, you need to probably prepare for the potential there. As to who you have on roster and who you would have to drop in accordance to pick up another quarterback, I wouldn't actually go about it this way. I wouldn't drop any of these players. If I was in your position, Itoza, I'd wait until Jordan Love is 100% deemed out, goes to the IR, then you'd put him in your IR spot, or goes to the out designation, not to the IR, but goes to the out designation, you move him to your IR spot, then pick somebody up. Now, if you're going to tell me that your IR spot's already full, then at that point, you're probably dropping Hopkins, because that is the most pliable piece of this entire kind of equation. Lou sends in a question. Thank you, Lou. Lou says, start Hubbard, Mostert, or Sutton. I'm not starting Mostert. Again, it's super touchdown dependent. Hubbard, I mean, look, the matchup is like really strong, but the fact that they have already designated that Bryce Young is going to start again doesn't make me feel great about the whole situation. In a PPR, I'm probably going with Sutton there. Falcon Beast 9 sends in a question, says, hello, comrade. Start 2 of Caleb Williams, Kyler Murray, Bo Nix. Yeah, I will play Kyler Murray and Bo Nix in this equation. Now, as for quarterbacks get a point for every completion, thank you very much. Yeah, that's the 2 that I would go with in this circumstance. Thank you. All right, we move on to a question that came in from God's Gang, who says, strange Washington didn't bring in a wide receiver. Could you see them bringing in someone? And who also, what do you think about the Chargers defense this week, or Titans or Patriots? Look, Chargers defense this week against Jameis Winston. Again, Jameis is probably just going to impose his will. I'm not going to say that he's going to have as great of a game as he did against the Baltimore Ravens, but I think like 250 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns for that offense, I think is at a bare minimum based on the way that he played and performed. So I'd say that the Chargers defense is something that I'd probably not be too interested in. I'd like to play the Titans defense. Otherwise, the only way that I would play the Patriots over the Titans defense is if we can get a confirmation that Will Levis is starting for the Titans. At that point, I'd play the Patriots defense. But as for your prior question in regards to Washington not bringing in a wide receiver this offseason, I mean, again, or not offseason, this kind of trade period, think about it this way, right? There's still a lot of wide receivers out there that specifically, like Adam Thielen is one that I'm thinking of off the top of my head. Did he crack that out of the park? Nope, not even close. Adam Thielen's still a guy that is floating. If they want a slot receiving option, that's what they would go after. Obviously, they still have the rookie Luke McCaffrey, who plays primarily, their slot receiving role. And then obviously they also utilize a lot of slot receiving utilization out of Zach Ertz. Excuse me, I was trying to find his name. For some reason, I couldn't click it. But as of right now, are they going to bring in any wide receivers? I doubt it. I don't think that they'll probably look for one. If they were going to, it would have been Christian Kirk because of his relationship with Cliff Kingsbury. But considering he got hurt, it's done. Jimbo Fisher sends in a question. Says, Taysom Hill or Mark Andrews at tight end spot or flex in a 12-team half PPR league. Yeah, as of right now, I'm not really too interested in playing Taysom Hill over Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews has been great. Taysom Hill requires, goal line opportunities. With Derek Carr back, it certainly is going to propel this offense to getting more goal line opportunities, but I'm not so interested in the kind of gamble of Taysom Hill in comparison to Mark Andrews, who's been highly consistent as of late and has caught the eye of Lamar Jackson enough to where it is promising to start him in comparison. Alex Songrass sends in a follow-up, says, my team consists of quarterback Jaden Daniels, Saquon Barkley, James Cook, Brian Robinson Jr., we have Josh Jacobs, Chase, Adams, Coleman, Pittman, Tillman, Pitts, Kraft, Harrison, Butker, Denver defense. Any moves to make? I mean, look, so as for your prior question, and then with the context now available, right? If you already have, again, like you've mentioned, Chase, Adams, Coleman, Pittman, Tillman, moving Adams alongside of Bigsby, you already have, okay, so you have Cook, Ryan Robinson. So Bigsby doesn't really actually matter in this whole thing. He's just trade fodder to you, Alex, which I 100% understand. And then it's just a matter of like Adams versus BTJ. Yeah, I'm cool with the BTJ trade. I have no issue with that at all, Alex. As for potential other moves, again, your tight ends are studs. Pitts and Kraft are guys that, again, are scoring touchdowns, which is the most important thing at the tight end position. You could theoretically try to move one of those, but again, the one that you would want to move is Tucker Kraft. Obviously, someone would have to be willing to make a trade in that capacity. Obviously, the Atlanta Falcons haven't experienced their bye week yet, so you might want to hold Kraft just to have that solid backup if your overall record isn't great enough to sustain any sort of kind of variable like, I have to pick up a waiver wire tight end and throw him in and hope that I win this week. Otherwise, I'm screwed. Outside of that, there's no real changes that are necessary to make. I think you've got a pretty strong team across the board there. Obviously, wide receiver is your biggest kind of weakness, and I think by bringing in BTJ, you definitely are addressing that immediately. Smell My Finger says, should I trade Hunt for Marvin Harrison? Need a wide receiver, help bad. Trade Hunt for Marvin Harrison. Yeah, absolutely. I'd be 100% down to do so. That works for me. Again, you got to remember, Hunt is going to disappear when Pacheco returns. Basil Abdullah says, in a PPR 10-team league, team is in the chat, we have Cup/Hunt for Kyron. Yeah, absolutely. I'll take Kyron there. Or shoulder. I do read and a RB for Dobbins. No, I mean, look, I'm good with the Kyron trade. I'm very much so happy if you're able to get that to work. That I think that would be really beneficial for you. So if you can, I'm just watching the game, sorry. If you can, you should do so. Now, as for the other potential trade, I'm not so interested in it. I'd probably just keep those potential. Like if you were going to trade Reed and Hunt for Dobbins, I wouldn't be as happy about it because Dobbins, again, his schedule is getting more and more difficult as the season progresses. And, it's not an offense that I'm super excited about in comparison to where the Rams are trending in the direction of with Kyron. Thank you. OJ Running sends in a question, says, starting Njoku, but I have Pitts on the bench for next week. Okay. I need a flex for this week. Should I drop Pitts for McConkey or Shakir? No, you should start Pitts in your flex. That's how it should be done. So put Pitts in your flex and keep it moving. That's the way you'd go about it. You do not want to, again, Pitts is as a start every week. I don't know why you're sitting him for Njoku. I kind of understand as to why you would. But I'd rather start Pitts this week, to be totally honest, based on his overall opportunity shares that he's been granted over the course of the last month of the season. Ridiculous shares of consistent targets in his direction, now making the most of them in terms of yards after the catch. So yeah, if you can, just keep him and flex him this week. Thank you. Ibrahim says, Dell over 4.5 catches. How many points he getting? Look, as of right now, in terms of my underdog plays, I already put one in last night. I have Dell going higher than 3.5 catches, Devontae Adams going higher than 3.5 catches, and then Devon Achane later this week going higher than 2.5 catches, and Jake Ferguson later this week over 3.5 catches. It's a $50 entry for 101.5. So again, it's only a 2x. Literally, it's only a 2x, but it is the minimum volume of receptions that each of them could potentially be kind of lowered down to on the Underdog app. So as of right now, that's that is my favorite plays of tomorrow, technically. Tank Dell, Devontae Adams going both of them higher than 3.5 receptions. Now, as to cooking up more stuff, we'll do that later on in the stream. But for right now, that's how I've got it set up. Thank you. Airbender says, questions in the chat. Thanks. Let me see what you have here, Airbender. Where is it? Let's see here. Airbender. All right, Airbender says, hey, Andrew, in a full PPR, I'm currently 3-5. Do I trade Nico for Metcalf and McConkey/Downs? Oof, wow, interesting. Current wide receivers are Pickens, Pittman, Coleman, Moore, Tolbert. Okay, so I would probably, so let's hear it out this way. In a full PPR, theoretically, if Joe Flacco remains as the starting quarterback of the Colts for the remainder of the year, Josh Downs is at very minimum 15 points a game, and I think so can Metcalf be. So that's like 30 points of wide receivers that you'd be trading for Nico Collins, who, in my opinion, could very easily, once he comes back, finish as the number one wide receiver for the remainder of the year. So I think it's just a matter of like how you want to approach this. If you can start 3 wide receivers in your league, I'm willing to make the trade just to give you more depth. If you can only start 2 wide receivers in 1 flex, I think you have enough on roster to not have to worry to have to make this move. And I'd be willing to just keep it as is. That's the way that I'd approach it. Just depending on how many wide receivers I can start kind of determines whether or not I need that extended value and giving up Nico Collins in order to accomplish that. Joe Wilson sends in a question, says in a 8-team half PPR flex, I'm currently 7-1. I have Jamar Chase as my wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 after, and I need a wide receiver 2 after Diggs. Bench, I've got Reed, Downs. Okay, Downs is your wide receiver 2, by the way, going forward. I've got on the waivers, I've got Dell, Myers, Pittman, Sutton, Tillman, Judy, Coleman. Recommend I stick or to the waivers? Okay, yeah, look, at this point, the question is, do you have to drop one of these wide receivers, Joe, in order to pick up a wide receiver? Because if that's the case, then I'd be willing to drop Ridley and go pick up either Myers or Dell or Pittman or Sutton. I mean, honestly, I think they're all really good options comparatively. I just don't like the Ridley experiment, especially like if Ridley has Will Levis have to come back and play quarterback at any time this year, he is not going to be worth keeping on roster in comparison to what else is available in that circumstance. Considering the 8-team league, again, your waivers are flooded with great players. I'd be willing to pick up any of those waiver options instead of Ridley. Again, I've got a couple of them already higher ranked than Ridley this week, and going forward, if they're going to be number 1 or number 2 options of their offense, I think they're certainly more valuable in my opinion, because I really don't want to have to deal with the Titans receiving core on a weekly basis with that quarterback play. Ibrahim Osman says, in a full PPR, should I trade Neighbors for Puka? I'm scared. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I have no issue with that at all. Yeah, sounds good to me. That works. It says, I'm scared of the O-line of the Giants, or do I go with Drake London? Yeah, I mean, look, I'm fine with shipping away Neighbors or Puka. Neighbors or London for Puka. Either one works for me. I think, look, Puka pretty much kind of showed that he's fully healthy last week. He was able to take hits. He was able to make moves. And even though he was limited, again, he had himself a monster game. So, yeah, in this circumstance, I'd be willing to move either of them for Puka. I don't have an issue with it at all. Thank you. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from Humble Maker 21. It says, I traded Garrett and Hunt for Kyron. Beautiful. Fantastic. My team in a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league and a half PPR consists of Kyler, Mixon, Kyron, Aaron Jones, A.J. Brown, Neighbors, Pitts, and Brian Robinson Jr. Yeah, that's a fantastic trade. I don't know how you got away with it. I think maybe if that team had Pacheco, I could understand why they would make the trade for Hunt. But otherwise, Hunt, in my opinion, long-term has very little value. Nick Q3435 says, my league settings make Boswell kicker rank 33 overall in fantasy. I'm stacked at running back and wide receiver. Am I crazy for dropping Bigsby to stream a kicker? Trading is not an option. I hit my league trade max. Got it. Yeah, I don't think you're crazy. If kicker points in your league are that disgusting, then yes, you should be probably. I mean, look, I play in the majority of the leagues I play in Superflex and so besides Superflex, 6-point per passing touchdown league. There are many weeks over the course of a season where kickers are significantly outscoring quarterbacks in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. Kickers are ridiculous if they're getting 5 points per 50-yard field goal, 4 points for a 40, 3 points for a 30, etc., and no minus points for missing. If you're in a league where you're getting even more of a bonus in that circumstance, Nick, I don't think it's crazy. I think, honestly, you should be streaming them and going after the best potential kicker every week if you can. Bryce Lawson sends in a question. Thank you, Bryce. Bryce says, trade Breece Hall for St. Brown or Tyreek Hill. I mean, at this point, if you don't need running back and you're just trying to look for the best available wide receiver rest of the way, yeah, I'd be willing to trade him for either of the two. I don't have an issue with that. I think Breece Hall at a full capacity, I think is a solid player, and I think very similar value across the board, especially full PPR wise. But yeah, as of right now, based on how the the offense for that Jets team has looked as of late, where they're trending in the direction of, I have no issue trading for either St. Brown or Tyreek. I'm okay with Tyreek there. Probably that's the easier of the two to potentially get back in return. But again, that's under the assumption that your running back position is very stable. Berlin B says flex Jaden Reed, Cade Otton, or Ladd McConkey. It's a standard league with no dedicated tight end spot. Got it. If Love plays and if he doesn't, also, would you trade Jaden Reed for DeAndre Hopkins? Okay, so as of right now, so let's answer the first question. Going into this week, I'm probably going to lean in okay, so I would assume that the Kansas City Chiefs defense is good enough where they're going to shut down Cade Otton. Enough to where it is going to be a lesser overall start in comparison to where it was last week. So if Josh Allen does end up playing this week, I will play, sorry, not Josh Allen. Sorry, scratch it. If Jordan Love ends up playing this week, I will play Jaden Reed. If he does not end up playing, then I will pivot to playing McConkey. Those would be the directions in which I go about it. Now, am I trading Jaden Reed for DeAndre Hopkins? Probably not. Because that would require having to objectively trust Patrick Mahomes to throw for touchdowns consistently, which thus far this season hasn't really grown that trust within me to make me feel comfortable by making a move of that capacity. Rogo sends in a question, says, with wide receiver issue, drop Coop for Keon. Picked up Adam Thielen off of the IR as a backup plan. We have Matthew Stafford, CJ Stroud. We have Baker. We have Gibbs. We have David Montgomery, Hunt, Swift, Chubb. We have Kincaid, Smith, Higgins, Debo, had Diggs. Got it. Yeah, I don't have it. Well, okay. In the long run, who do we think is going to have more value? I would think in the long run it has to be Amari Cooper. Because the talent is superior in my mind. Now, as to whether or not that's going to take a long time to be able to click in, to be determined. But if you need someone that is the more relevant play within the given week, then yes, you would make the swap there, Rogo. Thank you. Basil Abdullah says, concerning my team record, though, question mark. Team is in the chat. All right, let me see. Jaden Daniels. Okay. I see that. Jaden Daniels, Christian McCaffrey, Hunt, Mason, Brooks, Kenneth Walker, Tyreek Hill, Kupp, BTJ, Marvin Harrison, Reed, Juwan Jennings, Keon Coleman, Fergie, and Laporta. Cool. I mean, you're a 3-5 team. Am I making that trade for Kyron? Yeah. I mean, look, when I look at your team as a whole, right? Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back till next week. Kareem Hunt, again, is going to eventually disappear. Mason is not playing this week. Brooks is not playing this week. You have Kenneth Walker. You only have one running back that, again, is currently sitting in a great standing going forward. So, yeah, I mean, in the idea of being able to keep Tyreek Hill, BTJ, Marvin Harrison, Reed for the rest of the season, yes, I'm making that move. And considering the record, absolutely. I think the trade, regardless of record, regardless of everything, with no context provided, it is the right move to make, Basil. Let's see here. Donovan Jordan sends in a question. Says, in a PPR flex, pick one. We have Tank Dell, Chuba Hubbard, or Jacoby Myers in the flex. It's either one of those two wide receivers. I'm probably leaning in the direction of probably wanting to play Tank Dell in that scenario, considering there's literally, I mean, outside of Schultz, there's no competition for targets in the offense as of right now. Did he just knock a homer out of there? Let's hope not. There we go. Atta baby. Man, the bases are almost loaded here. Oh, almost beat him to the base. Close. All right. Continuing on, Rogo says, any defensive rest of season options? I got Denver. Can't drop teams full. Got it. So as of right now, is there any rest of season defensive teams that I like? I'd have to go look at the full schedules. I haven't even looked at it as of right now. When I look at Denver's schedule, again, I'd only ever there's a lot of potential of variable change that could be made. But when I look at their schedule, right, like week 12, 13, 15, 16, I like all those matchups. I like the Vegas, Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Los Angeles Chargers matchup, especially considering they're a winning team. They have a winning record, and they'll probably still have somewhere, in the playoff hunt kind of path from weeks 12 and beyond. So their defense will still be firing on all cylinders unless they have any major injuries. So I'm cool keeping Denver unless you have Minnesota, I'm probably just streaming weekly. Thank you. Dragon Slayer says 8-man PPR. Start McConkey or Pittman if DK is out. I'd rather play Pittman this week. Again, earlier today, we dropped our wide receiver rankings at a top 40 capacity here on the channel. So if you guys haven't checked that out, be sure to do so. Let's see here. Airbender says can start 3. It says can't start 3, and it says can start 3. Airbender. All right, let me see here. It says start 3 of my wide receivers who should start if trade is made. Okay, so looking back at your team, Airbender, in terms of, let's say, for example, you made this trade. Okay, if you were to make it, Metcalf, if he's active today, or if he's active this week, Metcalf would play next to Downs and Pittman. Those would be the 3 that you play. You play Metcalf, Downs, and Pittman because Pickens is on a bye, and DJ Moore has been ignored within the offense, and Coleman's a little bit too sketchy in comparison to the rest. So that's the way that I go about it if the trade was made. Yeah, but as of right now, Dragon Slayer, for sure, it's Pittman. Thank you. All right, Zeus sends in a question. Says, hey, Andrew, I acquired Christian McCaffrey recently, and Mason and Garendo both just hit the waivers. Which one should I pick up rest of the season? I'd rather have a Garendo. Again, I've mentioned this in the last couple of days. Considering Jordan Mason's current shoulder injury, we cannot trust to start him in any circumstance. So going forward, really, he is not the handcuff that I would want on roster. It would be Garendo, because if at any moment he could go down with that shoulder injury and then not be put back into the game, just like he was 2 of the last 4 games he's played, it is not worth rostering Mason. Therefore, I would go with Garendo there. Thank you. Tan Fam sends in a question, says PPR, Tank, ETN, Flowers, or Wanda Robinson. Yeah, Flowers is the start for sure. Josh Holt sends in a question, says full PPR pick 2, BTJ, Waddle, Devontae Adams pick 2. Yeah, as of right now, in terms of my current rankings, BTJ and Devontae Adams are my 2 highest ranked of the bunch. Thank you. Emily Doyle sends in a question, says I was about to drop Pittman for JSN. Keep Pittman? Absolutely. With Joe Flacco under center, I mean, the rest of the season, Michael Pittman Jr. is back to being a top 24 wide receiver, for sure. Him and Downs are implicated to stay in that position for the rest of the season, considering how well Joe Flacco has played, not only this season, but even last season to end it. He elevates the receiving options. You guys remember last year, back end of the year, Amari Cooper and David Njoku significantly higher higher level of production on a weekly basis. And obviously, saved and won many of us championships because of Joe Flacco's overall efforts. Even many of us started him on a weekly basis, and he was relevant. Freddie says, check my Discord message. Okay, Freddie, let me see here. All right, Freddie, what do you have here? It says, a guy offered me Montgomery and Laporta for London. No one is willing to trade in my home league. I look like the villain. Yeah, because you have a winning record and you have a stud team, brother. I don't know. You obviously are going to be ignored in terms of that aspect. But someone's offering you Montgomery and Laporta for London. Your wide receivers right now are Chase, Jefferson. And you basically... Okay, so the issue that I have here is who is your RB2 if you get rid of Montgomery? Screenshot bench. All right, once I see that, I'll be able to continue on. All right, moving on to the next question. Josh Holt sends in a... Okay, we took care of Josh Holt. We took care of Airbender. Took care of Emily Doyle. Shane Denslow says, Flacco or Lawrence in a 6-point per passing touchdown league. Between the two of them, I'd rather have Flacco this week. And going forward, to be honest. Soul Assassin says, in a start 2 full PPR, Puka, McLaurin, Higgins, and Hill. Yeah, Tyreek Hill and Puka Nacua are the 2 starts, for sure. Number 3 would be McLaurin, and number 4 would be Higgins. Higgins obviously dealing with an injury and the lesser option of the bunch. But Hill and Puka have to start. Thank you. Waleed says, questions in the chat. I don't trust Reed anymore. LOL. Yeah. Again, if you don't trust him, don't play him. Again, I'm just here to tell you what I would do in my overall leagues. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's wrong. So again, there's many ways you can go about it. It says flex Reed, Montgomery, or Garrett Wilson. I mean, as of those 3, depends on the scoring format, honestly. If it's like a half PPR, I'd probably play Montgomery. If it's a full PPR, I'd go with Garrett Wilson there. That's the way that I'd go about it, Waleed. So, yeah, I don't have an issue with not starting Reed. I don't even have Reed highly ranked this week because I don't trust him either in many circumstances. Shackle Free sends in a question, nothing attached to it. Shackle, hopefully it's in the live chat. And if it is, I can go ahead and check it out. Shackle says, follow-up, trade one of my RBs for Bo Nix. Is he promising rest of season? I mean, his rushing upside makes him valuable. As to whether he's promising and he's going to have consistent production, that is to be determined because he has a lot of tough matchups upcoming here with some pretty solid defenses. Kansas City twice is not an easy road ahead. Paul Adams sends in a question, says, can you tell me if I have a chance to win my league? My name in Discord is... listen, telling you whether you win your league is impossible. I will objectively tell you, if you want me to lie to you, I can, but I'm not going to. I cannot tell you if you're going to win your league because I can't predict injuries, nor can I predict actual 100% outcomes. And nor can I predict trades that other teams in your league make, what their teams consist of, what matchups you're going to have in your playoffs, all this kind of jazz. There's so many variables. Telling you whether your team is good and telling you whether or not you're going to win is completely different. Because winning your league is an impossible projection to make in this circumstance. But I will check it out in just a second here. Let me see. Did Freddie respond to me? All right, Freddie, let me see your bench. You have Freddie, here's the thing. You're in the business of trading wide receivers, brother. You're not in the business of trading running backs away. You cannot afford to trade away running backs because you don't have any. Like, I'm not starting Rachaad White every game for the rest of the year. Maybe from weeks 13 on, I'd be willing to do so because he's got some solid matchups. But even then, it's sketchy because of Bucky Irving's overall position. So as of right now, considering what you have on roster, I don't think that moving David Montgomery actually helps you. I think it makes your running back position that much sketchier on a weekly basis. Does this improve your flex? Absolutely. But I mean, at this point, I'm okay with what you have at flex as it currently stands. All right, let me get back into answering a couple of these. Alex Songrass had sent in a follow-up. Let me go ahead and let's see where the heck this is. Okay, my YouTube crashed, of course, as per usual. Dude, this YouTube system is absolute dog. I don't know why it crashes so often. Okay, scrolling back up. Let's hear. Alex Songrass had said from that team, trade Brian Robinson plus Adams for BTJ and Braylon Allen. I have no interest in Braylon Allen. I understand you may be a Breece Hall manager, but I think giving Brian Robinson and Devontae Adams, you are getting scammed. I would never make that deal. I'd rather keep Brian Robinson and Devontae Adams the rest of the way, no questions asked. The next question, Superflex full PPR, trade Mahomes and Jonathan Taylor for Achane and Neighbors. I have JD5 and Darnold. As of right now, I'd be willing to make that move. Yes, thank you. Moving on to a question to Sharps JD, who says, trade Michael Pittman for Tank Bigsby. I'm not interested in Tank Bigsby unless you're super desperate for a running back. I think Michael Pittman should be able to get you more in return. Understand that Tank Bigsby, with ETN eventually returning, is not going to have any sort of receiving utilization. Therefore, he is 100% going to have to score touchdowns every week. Otherwise, he will score less than 10 points in a PPR every time out, which will make him less than a top 24 running back. So I wouldn't be looking to make that kind of a move. I try to get a running back in exchange that is at very minimum going to get receiving utilization. I'd rather have Rachaad White. I'd rather have Bucky Irving rest of the way. Sergio Martinez says, should I trade James Cook for CeeDee Lamb? Absolutely yes. If you can, you should. Without a doubt in my mind. Jimbo Fisher sends in a follow-up. Says, Tolbert, Slayton, Washington, Demarcus Robinson, Taysom Hill, half PPR. Demarcus Robinson is my suggestion. I don't really feel like Tolbert's a fantastic play. Taysom Hill's very touchdown dependent. Slayton has had his biggest game of the season while Neighbors was there, but again, he made it on huge receptions down the field, which again are not as consistent, especially when you take on Washington this week. When you say Washington as a receiving potential option, let me see here. Washington. Who are we even referring to? I'm assuming, Parker Washington? I'm not playing Parker Washington. It's for sure DeMarcus Robinson out of the group there, Jimbo. Let's hear. Michael James says, my team is in the chat. Any advice? I will check it out right now. And then we had Chalateka09, who says, is Nico Collins for Tracy and Brian Thomas fair in a 12-team league? If you're getting Nico Collins side of that deal, I'd say yes. Otherwise, I don't really care. Like, okay, so if you're super desperate for a running back, understand that you're getting Tracy, who's attached to an offense that in many circumstances will not be in positive game scripts, not be heavily running the ball. Again, yes, they did so a lot against the Pittsburgh Steelers, but there are going to be a lot of matchups where they're not going to be in that pole position to continue to run the ball as much as they did on Monday night. So again, when giving away a top-tier wide receiver, who I believe is a top 3 guy once he comes back, considering Stephon Diggs' injury, you'd have to be super desperate at running back to be going after Tracy in this circumstance, in my opinion. If you were desperate, I'd say, okay, we can go for this. Otherwise, I'd probably just keep Nico in this circumstance. All right, let's see where Michael James' question kind of lands. And then we'll get to, Michael James. Michael, can you do me a favor and type in the live chat? That'd be greatly appreciated. I do not have any sort of context as to your question because it is probably kind of filtered out already because the live chat updates relatively quickly. Until then, I'll go over to the Patreon and answer this question. Where is your question? All right. Why did this not work? There it is. Got it. Okay, so looking at your team as a whole, this was from a question that came in earlier from Paul Adam, right? You were saying, is my team like going to win the league? Which again, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think your team is in a terrible position. You've got really good players with Tyreek Hill, Neighbors, Kyron, Swift, Pollard, Hawkinson, eventually Mayfield by week 12 and beyond. Really favorable schedule, and he gets Mike Evans back. Really, solid kind of spectrum of time there. You have Mark Andrews as a backup. Khalil Shakir is pretty solid. I don't think this is a bad team in any circumstance. It's actually a pretty solid team. As to whether you win the league, I cannot tell you objectively. That is an impossible task on hand. So as of right now, time will tell. Obviously, you've got great players. Obviously, your record as of right now, well, let's see. Where was your record? I'm trying to scroll up. I don't even know if I have context of what your record is. But yeah, it's in terms of your team for long-term success, I think it's pretty solid. If you wanted to make changes, you go to last week's episode in which we talked about rest of season strength of schedule, and you prepare that way. You look at weeks 15, 16, 17 and prepare your team like that. If you've got a good enough record to be able to look forward to the future in that kind of capacity. Moving on to a question that came in from Jace. Jace, where is your question? Jace, do me a favor, type in the chat as well. Nothing attached. So we're looking for Notepad. We'll put in Jace on the list. And then we're also putting... We will also put... Where is the other... Okay, and then we need Michael James to type in the chat. Michael James. All right, until then, we had Baba Booey who says, PPR, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Sutton for Nico Collins. If you have a lot of wide receiver depth, I'm talking about like Marvin Harrison and Sutton are your number 4 and 5 wide receivers, and you've got 3 better than them, then I'd say, sure, let's make the move. Anakin Woman sends in a question, nothing attached to it. Let me see if I can find your question in the chat. Let's see here. Anakin. Nothing attached. Do me a favor, type in the live chat. Thank you. Moving on to Cater, who says, Higgins/Coleman for Christian McCaffrey. Yes, I would. I have Chase, DK, and Henry/David. I would. I'd make that move. Give me Christian McCaffrey the rest of the way. Is there a lot of inherent risk? Absolutely, but I'd definitely be willing to go, and venture down that risky path. Jose Rodriguez sends in a question, says, full PPR, Dak Prescott, Darnold, Wilson, Olave, Higgins, Waddle, Walker, Montgomery, Hunt, Tracy, Christian McCaffrey. Any trade suggestions? I have Evans or Mixon on my radar. I mean, Evans would be a guy that if you have a solid record right now and you can afford to not have a wide receiver for, I guess, weeks 9 through 12, then you'd go after like moving Waddle for him. That's what you would do. But that's only if, in fact, you're in a position in which you can survive the next 4 weeks here, 4 games potentially here without Mike Evans. Outside of that, Montgomery, Walker, Christian McCaffrey, studs. You have Wilson, Olave. When Higgins is healthy, you're good there. Dak is not a startable quarterback, I don't think, on a weekly basis. It'll be very matchup dependent. Darnold solid, though. I think that the team is pretty, like, in terms of the pillars of how it's structured, you've got great players in each position. It's just a matter of now you got to get your healthy players, or you got to get your hurt players back to being fully healthy, which is Christian McCaffrey, which will give you a huge boost of like 25 points per week, if not even more, if he's back to being the normal self. So yeah, as of right now, I'm leaning in the direction of if you can get Mixon, I don't know how you're going to accomplish it, but let's go for it. If it requires a Montgomery plus a receiver, let's do it. If it's just going after Evans and setting a 1 wide receiver for it, then let's do that. All right, let's see here. We had a question from Scott who says, pick one, Chase Brown or Tank Dell. Are we talking about this week who I'm starting? Between the two of those, I'd probably rather start Chase Brown, to be honest. I think there's less variable risk in that circumstance. Ramblin' Man sends in a question. Ramblin' Man says, should I trade Stevenson and Rachaad White for Montgomery and Sutton in a half PPR? If you don't need the running back depth of Stevenson and Rachaad White, then I'd say yes. But if you're like, both these guys are like my number 2 and 3 running backs, and in trading for Montgomery, I'd only have 2 solid running backs the rest of the way, I'd say no, because I'd want to have the running back depth for upcoming bye weeks and, of course, potential injuries that could take place. And the depth is very valuable in that circumstance. But if this is like your number 3 and 4 running back, then sure, let's go for it. Actually, if it's your number 3 and 4 and you don't have a 5, it may also leave you a little bit vulnerable. So Rambling Man, you'd have to have like 5 running backs on roster already with those included to make a trade of that caliber. Also, I forgot to add that this is my question. Drop one Hawkinson, Kincaid, or Otten. If I'm dropping one of those options, I'm probably dropping Kincaid. Thank you. All right, let me go back into the live chat and let's see if we had questions from Anakin. Let's see, Anakin Woman says, trade Jalen Waddle and Zach Moss for Terry McLaurin. Yes, absolutely. No questions asked. I'd immediately get that trade done. Guy has Chase Brown 3 and 5, fifth in points, decimated by receiver loss. Had Ayuk. Yeah, you're cool. Yeah, with all the context available, I'd absolutely make that trade. Michael J, let's see if you had a question in the live chat. Michael J says, in a 10-team half PPR, Darnold, Montgomery, Hubbard, Reed, Devontae Smith, Downs, Hawkinson, Hopkins, Dobbs, Michael Wilson, and Elijah Moore with Christian McCaffrey on the IR. Okay, cool. So looking at your team across the board, hopefully Christian McCaffrey is going to come back healthy. That's really like super dependent. Otherwise, of course, your season's dead, right? But outside of that, Montgomery solid running back, Christian McCaffrey solid running back, Devontae Smith will survive. Reed, again, until we figure out what the deal with Jordan Love is, Downs will suffice. Hawkinson solid. In terms of how you can make moves with this team, very difficult to do so. Unless you are taking a healthy Christian McCaffrey and trading him for 2 players, you're not going to be able to make much variable change in terms of a trade. Because when I look at this team as a whole, there are not any players on this team outside of McCaffrey that would get 2 players in return that are actually startable. So you pretty much have to keep it as is and roll with the punches and hope that these guys begin to pick it up. When I say these guys, I specifically mean Reed and Hopkins. They have to figure it out and pick it up going forward. And once they do, I think the only other thing you have to worry about at that point is just figuring out which wide receivers to start every week. Because if they start to pick it up, you're going to have 4 or 5 startable wide receivers every week, and that's going to be the difficulty. Blessing and a curse at the same time, but that would be it. So unless you wait for Christian McCaffrey's return, have him pop off for 25 points, then ship him for 2 players, there's no variable moves you have to make in this circumstance. Because I'd like to keep Smith, I'd like to keep Downs, I'd like to keep Reed. And then Hopkins, I guess, is movable, so is Dobbs in this circumstance. But you would trade 2 of those players, you trade both of them, maybe for 1 singular running back in order to ensure that even when Jonathan Brooks comes back, he doesn't take over Hubbard's job and then leave you without a running back. So that's basically what you're looking for. You're waiting for all these guys to perform well and then just kind of reassure your RB3 with trading wide receivers away for it. Thank you. All right, moving on. We had another person who hadn't had it, or it was Jace, right? Yeah, Jace. Jace, nothing in the chat? All right, very well. So we continue on with Waleed, who says, let's see here. Roster scoring in the chat. Any trades or starts? All right, let's see, Waleed. Waleed says, sorry, second question. Do I trade Reed for Devontae Smith? I would. And am I dropping the Broncos defense for the Chiefs? I would. That's cool with me. Looking at your team, 6 point per passing touchdown, 2 quarterback league, 3 and 5. On a 3-game losing streak, I have Daniels, Kenneth Walker, Matthew Stafford, Bijan, Kyron, Montgomery. Dude, this is a really strong team in terms of running backs and quarterbacks already. You have London, Tyreek Hill, Reed. You have Garrett, Wilson. You have McBride. Yeah, you don't make any moves. If you're going to make a move, really, you're just trading 2 for 1s. Like, you would take Montgomery and Brian Robinson and trade for Saquon Barkley. That's the only thing that you would theoretically do. You could do it. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but that's the kind of trades in the caliber of trades you would have to make. Or you would take, David Montgomery plus Reed and trade for Puka Nacua, stuff like that. Otherwise, there's just too high of value players on this team, unless you're just trading 1 for 1s because you prefer to have, I don't know. Let's say, for example, you'd prefer to have Breece Hall over Bijan or something of that extent to where you're making lateral trades rather than upgrades. Thank you. All right, let's see here. Scrolling back down here, we had a question that came in from Dennis Rincon, who says, Devontae Adams, Devontae Smith, McConkey, Downs, start 3 full PPR. It would be Smith, Downs, and Adams as of right now. Thank you. Mean DeBush says, Odunze, Elijah Mitchell, Elijah Moore, I'm assuming, not Elijah Mitchell, sorry. Elijah Moore, Demarcus Robinson, or Parker Washington. Out of those available in a PPR, I'd rather play Elijah Moore out of the group. Thank you. Paul Adams says 5-3 record. Got it. Yeah, look, as of right now, 5-3 record, really solid team. I'm not worried. The only thing that is stressful for your team, Paul, is the fact that you don't have a more solidified quarterback for the upcoming future in the absence of Mike Evans than Baker Mayfield. That's the only issue. You have Tua Tagovailoa on the bench, but I don't even trust Tua this week to play. So, you're being forced to have to play Baker, which sucks. But in the long term, he still will be a stud from weeks 12 and beyond because their schedule, if you go look at Tampa Bay's schedule, it is ridiculous from weeks 12 beyond into the playoffs. Let's see here. We had a question that came in from Josh Holt who says, do I hold on to Stroud? I picked up Stafford on waivers. As of right now, I would assume that he does get himself a bonus of potential upside going forward once we get the return of Nico Collins. But I'm willing to say that Stafford probably starts over him rest of the way unless it's a really advantageous matchup. Until the next time Stroud takes on Jacksonville, I would say that Stafford probably is the play. Shane Denslow sends in a follow-up. Let's hear Shane. All right, Shane, where is your question? Dowdle or Algier in a PPR? Dowdle, 100%. Let's see here. Thank you. Okay, cool. If that was your question, then yeah, we'll go with Dowdle for sure. Thank you. Moving on to Zeke Rodriguez. There's questions in the chat. Thanks. No problem. All right, Zeke, where are you at? Let's see here. Zeke says full team PPR. And that's it. There's no question attached. Nothing else. If you can do me a favor, Zeke, type it in the chat. Thank you. I will wait for your response. Did Jace send in anything? Jace? Nothing from Jace? Okay, so Jace is gone. All right, continuing on, we had a question that came in from Big Cat, who says, send Deontay Johnson and Hubbard for someone. What should I get? As of right now, it depends. Do you want a running back or do you want a wide receiver in return? If you're going after a running back, like I'm willing to just go after just about anything. Like at this point, if someone's willing to, I mean, I'll go through the list right now. Let's see here. Let's pull these players up, shall we? Because I'm assuming if you're giving away Hubbard, Hubbard's kind of been a huge kind of cornerstone of your team in the last couple of weeks here, and maybe you would need a running back in exchange. If you were going to go after running backs, giving away Deontay Johnson and Hubbard, I would hope could potentially get you a player of the caliber of Brian Robinson in return. J.K. Dobbins, Chase Brown, probably could go after... I don't think you can, I mean, you could try to go after James Conner. You can try to go after Aaron Jones. I doubt those things are potentially possible. So like the market of running backs you could theoretically go for are really thin. Like it'd have to be like a Conner, Pollard, Montgomery, Brian Robinson. J.K. Dobbins would be the worst case scenario of the group. Chase Brown would also be worst case scenario, but still viable options for the long term. Those are the kind of players you'd have to get because I don't think anybody's giving you Swift, Jacobs. No one's going to give you, I mean, Kenneth Walker's, Breece Hall's. I don't think Aaron Jones goes in your direction. James Conner, Gibbs, Devon Achane. None of those players are potentially applicable in this circumstance. Now, as for wide receivers I'd go after, I'm not joking. I'm so in on Josh Downs that I'm trying to trade for him in every single one of my leagues I don't already have him in. But if you were to trade, let's say, for example, Hubbard and Deontay Johnson, what I would try to go after at the moment, again, I try to go after Josh Downs, but if, you know, looking at the across the board, if T. Higgins is available because he's injured, sure, I'll take it. If the potential of someone like Devontae Adams is a buy low candidate, I would take it as well. Outside of that, trying to think, maybe you can scare somebody into trading you Zay Flowers. That's a potential, but I don't know. They'd be taking Deontay Johnson would be difficult. I'd go after DK Metcalf as well, but I doubt that's possible as well. Kind of higher valued positional prospects here because like no one's going to give you BTJ or Kupp or Garrett Wilson. Unfortunately, you're going to have to you have to go after like Michael Pittman's, Jacoby Myers, Jaden Reeds of the world, which again isn't pretty. But those are just names. Thank you. RJ says, PPR trade Mahomes and Connor for Evans and Pittman. If you can afford to give away Connor and you don't need running back help, then sure. But that's, again, very much so contingent that you do not need the running back help at the moment. Let me see what Shackle sent in. Shackle has sent in another question. Said, hey, Andrew, you missed my main question. Only read the second follow-up. Yeah, you know what the problem was, Shackle? It's let's see here. Trade one of my RBs for Knicks. Is he promising rest of the season? Okay, but look, here's the thing. I don't know who your RBs are. Okay, here we go. Now you give me some context. Let's see here. So your quarterbacks are Carr and Richardson, or Winston, or Herbert. Okay, very well. And then your running backs are Montgomery, Chubb. Okay, yeah, cool. As of right now, I'd pick up Winston, and that's who I'd start rest of the season. If push comes to shove, I would trade Chubb for Knicks. But that would be it. Otherwise, the rest of them have to stay on roster. I'd consider sending away Hunt for it, but I think you can get more value out of Hunt than just Bo Nix, in my opinion, in terms of a quarterback in return. You might be able to get more value sending him to the Pacheco manager as well. Thanks, Shackle. All right, let's see here. Michael sends in a question. Nothing attached to it, though. Found it. It says trade Waddle and Hubbard for Montgomery. If you don't need the wide receiver depth, I'm cool. I'm cool with it. I don't have an issue with it. Montgomery, again, is past his bye week. He's going to be a solid 13 to 15 points every game. I would assume in a full PPR has a little bit more upside, maybe like 14 to 16 if he gets 1 reception per game. So yeah, I'm okay with that as long as that's what you want. If you're good with just a solid RB2 rest of the way, you never have to blink, you never have to take him out of your lineup, good to go. That's the way we'd approach it. Obviously, Jonathan Brooks practiced in full earlier today. Hubbard's value is beginning to diminish as to why you guys are looking to potentially move him. And again, Waddle would be the main, kind of counterpiece in this circumstance. As long as you're solid on wide receiver, I don't have an issue with it. Prodigy sends in a question, says in a 12-team PPR, we have Stafford, Murray, Gibbs, Achane, Brian Robinson, Eckler, Nico, London, Cup, Reed, Olave, and Bowers. Should I try to package some guys to upgrade a wide receiver or RB or hold my team? Look, as a whole, quarterbacks are solid. Running backs, again, you have 2, in my opinion, top 6 running backs rest of season with Gibbs and Achane. And then you have Brian Robinson in terms of kind of like fluff as a flex. Then you have Nico, London, Cup, who are all arguably top 15, if not top 12 wide receivers rest of the way. And you have Olave, which is in that top 15 conversation. And Bowers is potentially top 2 tight end rest of the way as well. Maybe top 3, top 4. Worst case scenario. In the grand scheme, you've got a really strong team. So if you were going to pair up players to ship them out, it would be taking Eckler and Reed, and then, it would be those kind of players, because I would want to keep, well, considering Gibbs and Achane are past their bye week, it is favorable to have them as your starters rest of the way, but I want to keep Brian Robinson just in case of injury circumstance. So I keep him, and honestly, looking at the team across the board, unless Reed is moving out, like you could take Reed and Olave and trade for A.J. Brown, theoretically. Right? You could do something like that if you'd like and just get a massive upgrade to wide receiver. It just makes it that much harder for you to start your players on a weekly basis either way. But those kind of trades are definitely ones that are probably in the forefront of my mind based on how this team is constructed with so much depth and strength at the top of the positions. Ace007 says, trade Kenneth Walker and DJ Moore for Neighbors and Pollard. Look, Kenneth Walker is so much better than Pollard rest of the way. But then on the opposite side of the coin, I think Neighbors is so much better than DJ Moore the rest of the way. Let me look at the depth of your team. You have Breece Hall, Kyron Williams. Your wide receivers are Moore, Nico, Mooney, and Zay Flowers. So as of right now, you'd be trading. You get Neighbors, plug it in there for the rest of the way. You'd lose Moore. Look, considering DJ Moore has not played up to his overall potential in any sort of capacity, and he may not get to the levels at which he was last year, I'm okay taking the deal. I'm okay with that, taking the Neighbor side. Thank you. All right, Derek Doug says, drop Mason for Tyjae Spears or Jonathan Brooks. I'd rather have Jonathan Brooks in that scenario. Unless you're a Pollard manager, I don't think you need Tyjae Spears. Let's see here. YG sends in a question, says, why is Deontay valued so low? Best wide receiver Lamar has ever had, and the offense passes a lot, and bad defenses? No, that's not the whole point. The offense doesn't pass that much. Like if we go look at Lamar Jackson's passing attempts per game, again, outside of a game in which they're in a negative game script, he's not going to sling the ball across the field very many times. Like just looking at his most recent games, yes, against Cleveland, very competitive game, threw the ball 38 times. Only completed 23 passes. You go back to the week prior against Tampa Bay, 22 total passing attempts, 17 completions. The week prior, 26 total passing attempts, 20 completions. So you go back to the Buffalo and Dallas game, 12 completions, 13 completions, 15 attempts, 18 attempts. When they are in pole positions to, capture victories and they're not in competitive games, it is not a passing funnel of an offense. It is we're going to run the ball down your throat for the entirety of the second half and kill you. The issue with Deontay Johnson is that if he's only valuable when he gets 14 targets from Andy Dalton, it is going to be very tough to find fantasy upside without a touchdown if he's only getting 7 targets a game from Lamar Jackson, which again, 7 targets a game, if he throws 28 times, is a 24% target. Like it's in that like quarter of the percent of the target share, which is a great number, but 7 targets is not enough to sustain that kind of a wide receiver for fantasy purposes. Elseway sends in a question, and so does Chris Silva. Nothing attached to them. I'm going to go ahead and look them up in the chat right now. Elseway, and we need Chris Silva. I'm also going to go back to find Zeke's question right now. Zeke says, in my team is Jalen Hurts, Cook, Hall, David Montgomery, Mason, Irving, Davis, and Braylon Allen. My wide receivers are London, McLaurin, BTJ, Mooney, Worthy, Kelsey, and Hawkinson. I'm currently ain't know any suggestions to make. Yeah, as of right now, I would drop Mason, to be totally honest, and I would go and scoop up players off of the waivers. I'd also considering you have Cook it is okay to keep Ray Davis, but I'd also consider potentially dropping him in this circumstance. But for the long term, it's okay to keep him as the insurance policy. As your quarterback, look, Jalen Hurts is never being replaced. Breece Hall, James Cook, David Montgomery are your solid RB 1 through 3s. Irving is your kind of fill in due to an injury and or potentially kind of fill in due to bye week player. So those 4 are kind of stuck in stone. I think Braylon Allen could also be shipped off if need be. London, McLaurin, BTJ, 3 solid wide receivers. Mooney, Worthy, again, are only players that are potentially going in for a bye week or an injury circumstance. Kelsey and Hawkinson. Once Hawkinson returns and he puts up good performances, I'd probably say it's in your best interest to keep Kelsey, then ship off Hawkinson. So you could eventually, Zeke, go about it where you take your David Montgomery and a Hawkinson and trade it for a better running back. But it's going to take a little bit of time to be able to accomplish that. I don't know when your trade deadline is, but I'd give it a couple weeks here, maybe just hopefully 1 week in which Hawkinson's able to play well this week against Indianapolis. It's a pretty solid matchup. And then when he does, you can ship him with Montgomery and get a running back upgrade, or you can ship him with BTJ and get a wide receiver upgrade effectively. That's the only way that I see that you could improve this team is 2-for-1s. Otherwise, you've got like top 16 players at both RB and wide receiver across the board and top tier tight end and quarterback. So unless you're 2-for-1ing, you're really not going to get much in return. Let's see here. Elseway, let's find your question in the chat, shall we? Elseway says, PPR, I have Josh Allen and Baker and would like to trade for a wide receiver. I can't believe I'm asking, but who should I trade? Which wide receiver should I target? Rest of team, if I need a package player, Pittman, JSN, Mooney, McConkey, Dobbs, JSN, Montgomery, Connor, Hunt, Pacheco, Otten, Laporta. Are we trusting Vikings defense against Flacco? Am I trusting it? I mean, again, I'm going to have them probably ranked somewhere between like defense number 11 through 14. So like they're startable. Do I love the matchup? No, I don't love the matchup because I think Flacco's a machine. So in terms of this overall circumstance though, of you have Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, you want to trade for a wide receiver. I don't know why the Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield status matters to me in terms of the context. If you're going to trade for a wide receiver, someone's going to want a wide receiver in return, unless they've got a bunch of studs. And considering your wide receivers consist of Pittman, JSN, Mooney, McConkey, Dobbs, I mean, you don't have any wide receivers. So you're going to have to potentially take like James Conner plus a wide receiver like Mooney and trade for an upgraded wide receiver. That's the way you'd probably have to go about this, which kills your running back depth. But that's the only way, unless you can somehow give away, like maybe you can trade away McConkey plus Dobbs and go after an Olave. You'd have to hope that that's the case and somebody's willing to make that trade, but 2-for-1s are the only way. Because your wide receivers as a whole, none of them have like superior value to where you can 1-for-1 or 1-for-2 in your favor. So you're going to have to 2-for-1 in a lot of these scenarios. As for available wide receivers you might be wanting to go after, again, if you can get, I mean, again, if somehow, some way Cooper Kupp is a buy low candidate, you go after him. Neighbors is a buy low. Zay Flowers, if people are afraid, you trade for him. Josh Downs is a guy I'd go after. I'd also be willing to go after T. Higgins considering he's injured. Same thing with DK Metcalf considering he's injured. Tank Dell's going to be a number 1 or 2 receiver of that offense going forward. You could potentially try to buy low on him as well. You already have Pittman, which would be another option. Devontae Adams is a buy low candidate. Jacoby Myers is someone that is often slept on. Waddle just had a terrible week. You could go after him as well. Those are some names. All right, scrolling back up here, we had a question that came in from Chris Silva. Let's see if I can find that question. Chris Silva says, I have Cooper Kupp and Nakua. I have to start 3 wide receivers out of Cooper Kupp, Puka Nakua, Olave, and Neighbors. Am I crazy if I start Nakua and Kupp even though they're on the same? No, absolutely not. You're not crazy at all. I would say, yeah, let's start them both for sure. I don't have an issue with that. Again, would I prefer to start them both this specific week? Probably not. I think Olave and Neighbors are pretty good options. But if you're just wondering whether or not you would start them both every week, I'd say 100% yes. They have proven that they can both be relevant regardless of the other one being active. I don't think unless you're starting 4 players from one team. And even then, I'd be willing to start 4 players on the Eagles. If I had Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Saquon, I'd start all 4 of them. But I think 4 players is too much. 2 players, 2 wide receivers, same team is not an issue for me. I'd be willing to start Higgins and Jamar Chase on the same team. I'd be willing to start guys like Deebo Samuel and George Kittle on the same team for fantasy wise. Like I don't think these are issues at all, considering they're both going to find themselves a lot of success for fantasy purposes. Alrighty, let's go ahead and go down. My computer crashed again. What a classic. Okay. All right, let's see here. We had a question that came in from. After that one, we have RJ, who says, bench one, Gibbs, Taylor, Walker. Happy birthday. Thank you, RJ. Between the three of them, I don't like. Oh, wow. Look at the Dodgers cooking right now. Wait a minute. Here we go. Top of the eighth. Coming back. If I'm sitting one of the three, I mean, the lowest ranked player I have out of the bunch is Taylor. So Walker and Gibbs play. Thank you. Mike sends in a question. Mike, where is it? There it is. I see it. Mike says, drop Cedric Tillman for DJ Moore. If so, how much fab do I drop on DJ? Someone dropped him in my league standard. Man, I don't actually blame someone for dropping him, but yes, I'd be willing to go and make that swap. As to how much fab I'm utilizing, it depends on how much you have remaining in this circumstance. If you don't have much remaining, I don't even make the play. I let somebody else waste their fab on it. I don't think it's a waste, but I'm not trying to spend like 40% for DJ Moore right now, especially considering I don't even know what the context of your team is. Like, if you pick him up, does he even play, or is he going to sit on your bench the whole time? Because I might want to keep the fab for the future in case of a horrible injury that takes place to another position in which I might want to utilize it. So yeah, as of right now, I'd be willing to go after him, but it would require like maybe I'd throw 15% at it and just let it ride. 15, 25 if you need a wide receiver. 25 is more in line. But you have Cedric Tillman, which as of right now, I have very closely ranked to DJ Moore this week and potentially going forward if DJ Moore's target counts don't begin to increase. Randall says in the chat. Okay, Randall. Randall says, happy birthday, Purdy, for Tucker Kraft and Tyler Algier. I have Hurts. I picked up Flacco, been streaming tight ends in a 16. Yeah, that's cool. I have no issue with that at all. Obviously, this week, if Malik Willis is at quarterback, expect a little bit less out of Tucker Kraft, but in the long term, when Jordan Love returns, you should be fine. Yeah, that's cool with me. It's a one starting quarterback league. Yeah, you're good to go. Trade Purdy. We Buy Home says that a non-PPR start 2 running backs, 1 flex, and 1 wide receiver. Breece Hall, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery, and Kareem Hunt. Out of that group, I am sitting Kareem Hunt this week. The other 3 running backs are going to start ahead of him in a non-PPR. Additionally, as for your 1 wide receiver that I would start out of that group, I'm playing Drake London this week. So Drake London, Breece Hall, Tony Pollard, David Montgomery. Those are your 4 starts within the given week. Thank you. Moving on to Ghazi, who says, should I drop Kraft for Otton? I have TJ as well. Am I dropping Kraft for Otton? Okay, if Otton is available in your league, I would like to assume that no one in your league needs tight end, especially considering waivers just surpassed. So if no one needs a tight end in your league and you are just trying to prepare for the best available tight end rest of the way, yeah, I'd be willing to pick up Otton in that circumstance because I think his usage from weeks 12 and beyond are going to be ridiculous. King Alex says, hi, Andrew. In a 2-6 situation because of my quarterback, Burrow, Stafford, or... Okay, so because of quarterback, Burrow, Stafford, or Darnold, if I'm picking one this week to play, if Burrow does not have the potential of T. Higgins active, I'm going to play Stafford instead of him. Darnold home prime time. Burrow might take early lead, and Seattle defense is unpredictable. I think Seattle defense is quite predictable. They're not good. They cannot stop the run and they cannot stop the pass. So yeah, I'm starting Stafford in that scenario. Brent Shin says, I traded Mahomes and Worthy for Marvin Harrison. Beautiful. I have Daniels. Great. I also traded Brian Robinson Jr. for Evans. I don't love that as much. PPR league. I have Nico, J Jets, and Pickens. I traded Brian Robinson for Evans. So if you traded for Evans and you already have Nico, J-Jet, and Pickens, you must have a bunch of stud running backs because giving away a 15-point running back for a wide receiver that doesn't return until week 12 is very risky in this circumstance. So hopefully you have running back depth, and if you do, let's hope for the best and hope that Mike Evans returns after that week 11 bye. Derek Doug says, would you play Gabe Davis over Keon in the flex? No, I would rather play Keon Coleman. Thank you. Michael says, in a 10-team PPR, we have Kyler, London, Hill, Kyron, Hubbard, Kincaid, BTJ, bench is Downs, Jacoby Myers, Madison, Tracy, Waddle, Christian McCaffrey, Brooks, and Pacheco. Traded Waddle and Hubbard for Montgomery. Okay. Should I make a move to improve quarterback and tight end as well? Kyler is solid. I don't really have an issue with that, especially if he keeps running. That is what is important. As for improving tight end, I mean, again, you've got enough depth to be able to do so. So yeah, if you want to take Kincaid coming off of the most recent performance and try to move him along with another player in order to get an upgraded tight end. As for the tight ends that you would theoretically go after, it's going to be tough considering every top tier tight end just had a major week. I mean, literally all of them either scored touchdowns or had a bunch of yards. It's going to be tough. It's going to probably cost you a little bit. You might want to wait for the trade market to kind of collapse a little bit this week, because it's not going to be National Tight Ends Day where every tight end gets 10 targets within the weekend. But yeah, I think upgrading tight end is your biggest form, because outside of that, nothing needs to be upgraded at running back or wide receiver. You've got a bunch of studs across the board there. Remember that Josh Downs is a 15-point wide receiver rest of the way in a PPR. You could easily take him and Kincaid and probably trade for a solid tight end right now. You should be able to. If you're not able to, then people don't understand the value of Flacco plus, Josh Downs. If you need to convince them, take the section of my video from earlier today, wide receivers, in which I talked about Josh Downs, and just send that to them and try to convince them otherwise. Double D23 says, trade Waddle for Olave. Yes, I'll take Olave rest of the way. Vlad sends in a question, says, Lad McConkey, Thielen, Dobbs, what two would play? I'm not playing Thielen this week. I'd rather play Dobbs. Well, actually, Dobbs only if Jordan Love is active. If Jordan Love is not active, you have to play Thielen with McConkey. Otherwise, it's McConkey and Dobbs. Thank you. Derek Doug says, should I package Jaden Reed for AJB? If you can. Like I was mentioning earlier, if you guys can 2-for-1 and somehow get these top tier wide receivers on your team, then I would do it, especially for those of you who have the depth available to make trades of that capacity, for sure. Let's see here. Blue Jay sends in a question. Blue Jay says, hey, Andrew, in a 12-team full PPR, my current roster is Hurts, JT, Dobbins, Rashad White, Mostert, Vidal, Goodson. Okay. Wide receivers are Jamar, Kupp, Debo, Mooney, Thielen. Tight ends are Pitts and Kraft. 4-4, any moves? I mean, my immediate suggestion off the top of my head is dropping Vidal and Goodson and picking up any sort of wide receivers off the waiver. Like if an Elijah Moore's out there, I'd go after it. I just want to give you a little bit more wide receiver depth, because my initial kind of idea for a trade would probably kind of revolve around, considering like you're starting running backs. I mean, they're solid. They're not the greatest, but I would, if you're playing in a league where you can start technically 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 flex, I'd be willing to take like Debo, take it alongside of a Rashad White, go after an upgraded running back and a downgraded wide receiver. I'd go after the team that has Josh Downs. I try to ask for Josh Downs. I'd ask for the upgraded running back, whatever they have, and I'd send them like a Rashad White Debo combo in exchange for it, just to give you a little bit more depth at running back that is solidified. If not, you keep it as is. That's the only approach that I'd go about it as of right now, because really, Kupp, Jamar, Debo can start every game. It's just that RB2 that's very sketchy between Dobbins and Rashad White. In a PPR, you're going to have to kind of play it by matchup, which you could solidify it, or you can leave it as is and just play the matchup basis, which I don't mind doing. I'm just suggesting that was the only move that you could theoretically make, because you can't upgrade Hurts and you can very barely upgrade Pitts based on how well he's played as of late. Ben sends in a question, says CJ Stroud or Tillman for Mahomes. Thoughts? I'm not really interested in Mahomes at that capacity. When I look at Mahomes' upcoming schedule, unless Mahomes completely turns it around, completely turns it around, where he's throwing 3 touchdowns a game and he's back to being 2018 Mahomes. Yes, he has a great matchup this week, but then he has to take on Denver and then Buffalo. Don't love those at all. Then he has to take on Carolina, Las Vegas, which, again, those are great matchups, but they're not in the fantasy playoffs yet. But then in the fantasy playoffs, or getting to it, you have Los Angeles, Cleveland, Houston, and Pittsburgh. I don't love those matchups overall. I really don't. Not for him in this circumstance. So if you want to, you can make the trade, but I mean, that's if you have a abundance of confidence that Mahomes is going to turn it around here. Dynasty 39 says pick 3 in a full PPR. Pittman, Ladd, Deontay, Ferguson. As of this week, I'm not playing Deontay Johnson. I'd rather play the rest of the group. Deontay Johnson is going to play 30% of the snaps at most. Let's see here. Raghav sends in a question, says in a 10-team full PPR and 4-4, I have Darnold, Love, Achane, Chuba, Connor, Jacobs, Etienne, Brooks, Jamar, Kupp, Downs, Dobbs, Debo, Ingram, and Ferguson. Feel like I can package some guys for someone. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I think you could too. Look, the running backs that I want to keep on this roster are Achane and Jacobs, right? Those are the 2 that I want to keep. The third I'd like to keep is at least Connor. So Chuba Hubbard and Etienne and Jonathan Brooks are pliable. I think you can move the combination of the 3 for whatever you'd like to try to get in exchange. Now, as for wide receiver, Jamar and Kupp are your 1-2 combo. Debo is your number 3. Again, like I've said in the past, and I will continue to say, in a PPR, Josh Downs is going to score 15 points minimum. he's probably going to actually be an 18-point wide receiver rest of the way here. So Josh Downs is a guy that if in fact somebody is willing to give you an upgrade, you send him and let's say ETN or him with a combination of Chuba Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks for a potential upgrade. Shoot, I'd be willing to give Downs and Connor and go after the big guns. Like I'd legitimately go after a top tier running back like Breece Hall. You could try it because again, Downs is, I'm not overstating it when I tell you guys, he's going to just rack points. It is ridiculous what he does with Joe Flacco because of how good Joe Flacco is at his current age. I mean, Flacco has no business being this good at the moment, but he is. And considering that is the case, we got to roll with the punches. Again, the last 3 games in which we have seen Josh Downs with Flacco, 22.2, 15.9, 19.5 fantasy points. Ricardo says, would you choose Jake Bates or Jason Myers to kick this week? I'd rather have Jake Bates this week. Would you start Swift or Josh Jacobs? I'd rather have... Ooh, that's a really good question. In a standard scoring league, if Jordan Love is going to play this week, I'd say Jacobs. If he's not, I'd probably go with Swift. Next question, Kupp or Devontae Smith? I'd rather have Kupp. Thank you. Jay says, can you not see my question? Jace, so this is the thing that we learned the other day. I cannot see your question. Let me tell you why. If you type in the question too many times in a row, the YouTube automated system will shadow ban you. So it'll remove your questions from the overall invoice of the live chat. So what you have to do every time you send in a message is if it's going to be the same question again, you quite literally have to retype the whole thing in a different manner. Flip the top to the bottom, bottom to the top, reorder the phrasing of the words and the players and change the order. If you send in the same copy pasta again, it is going to shadow ban you. We learned that, I think, 2 weeks ago when somebody had the same issue as you that you're kind of currently facing, Jace. So no, I cannot see your questions. Brian Colorado sends in a question. Brian, where's your question? Brian Colorado. Brian says, on my bench, I have Komet, Leggett, Rico, Corum, and Warren. I don't feel comfortable playing Broncos defense against Baltimore. Who should I drop for the Patriots defense? If I was to drop one of them, I would suggest dropping Komet. Thank you. All right, moving on to a question that came in from Bacon. Bacon says, trade Reed for Downs. You know, I don't mind it. I actually do not mind it. Get back to the plate. Get back to the plate, please. Wait. Did we get some runs there? Beautiful. Love to see it. There we go. We took the lead. All right, guys. How long have we been here for? An hour 15? All right. I want to watch the last inning of this game for the Dodgers. Hopefully my Dodgers can clinch the World Series here. I'm going to answer a couple more questions, then I'm gone. But yes, Bacon, I'm actually down. King sends in a question, says, full PPR, I have AJ Brown, Jaden Reed, DJ Moore, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison, I'm assuming, Mooney, trade Marvin for Njoku. If I was going to... Can we not trade Marvin potentially for a Kelsey? Well, actually, look, the only team that you're going to be able to trade for is a team that has multiple tight ends. So if there's nobody like Tucker Kraft available on the wire, Hawkinson that you can get at a cheaper price, Laporta, Mark Andrews at cheaper prices in comparison, considering the depth you have at wide receiver, I'm willing to go after it, but I'd rather give Marvin Harrison for like a Kelsey, a Bowers, somebody of that nature, because I know the potential Marvin could be extremely high rest of the way, but I mean, technically so can Njoku. I'd even be willing to give him for Evan Ingram instead, but if Njoku is the best thing you can get in exchange and your current tight end position's in shambles, then sure. I think it definitely will help your team in the long run here. Underdog picks, yeah. So as of what I mentioned earlier, my 2 favorite picks for tomorrow, as of currently stands, is Tank Dell higher than 3.5 receptions and Devontae Adams higher than 3.5 receptions. Those are the 2 that I prefer, and I've already put in a slip for. Ben and Shaka will be the last 2 to answer questions, and then I got to go watch the ending of this game. As soon as I'm done answering, no more super chats. Don't send them in. If you send them in, I'm not answering. I'm just bouncing after this. Ben says, I have Pollard, Bijan Robinson, Kupp, Devontae Adams, Olave, and Lamb, Bowers at tight end, Pickens and McConkey are on my bench. What trade would you try to improve this roster? I have 3 wide receivers. So considering the 3 wide receiver format, you want to keep 4 stud wide receivers on roster. So having Devontae Adams, Kupp, Olave, Lamb, you're good. Pickens is potentially that like pivoting factor where you could take him and McConkey. I almost said Mookie because I'm watching baseball on the screen. You could potentially take Pickens and McConkey to try to go and make upgrades. Like you could take Pickens and Pollard and go after a stronger running back. Like maybe you take both of them and you go after a legitimate like Breece Hall. You might be able to. You just have to find a team that is in desperate need of a wide receiver. Okay, final question of the day. Shackle, where are you? Shackle says, I missed my full question. Oh, brother. I spent like 10 minutes on it. Okay, so do I drop my Superflex quarterback Richardson for Carr, Herbert, or Winston? So like I mentioned earlier, we're taking Winston, and that's the guy that we would want to roll with the rest of the season. So yes, you would drop Richardson for Winston. Also, for wide receivers this week, Downs, Shakir, Olave, Higgins. Downs and Shakir are the 1-2 combo. Number 3 would be Higgins if he plays. Otherwise, it's Shakir. As for running backs, Hunt, Jonathan Taylor, Montgomery, Chubb. I'm playing Jonathan Taylor 1, Montgomery 2, Hunt 3, and Chubb 4. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody. For those of you who sent Discord questions or Patreon questions, I will get to those after the game is concluded. Until then, have a great rest of your day, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cue the double helix, and I'm going to watch the final inning of this World Series game. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with quarterback and tight end rankings and live streaming after the game. See you guys. Peace.